Welcome to this session on careers in engineering. This is going to be a more of an introductory session on how to build one's career or what one ought to do in preparing oneself for a career in engineering. So it's ideally for who are looking forward to establishing themselves in engineering. It could also be of use to some of the people who are fresh into their starting their careers in engineering in some form. So that is the audience that I'm actually going to be talking about. So if you have any questions, you can, in between, I'll just stop for a few times and then check the chat box and answer your questions. So now moving on. So first and foremost, what is actually engineering? When we look at the definition of engineering actually comes from a Latin word called ingenium, which means cleverness, or engineer, meaning to contrive or to devise. So engineering is got to do with using the intelligence to devise certain solution to problems that are faced in the society in some form. So it is actually the application of scientific, economic, social, and practical knowledge. So in order to design, build, or maintain certain structures, machines, devices, systems, materials, process, it could be anything. So primarily engineering uses the basics concepts of science, picks the problem which are faced from through economics and social. So when a solution is being prepared, the economic aspects of the solution, the social aspects of the solution are also factored. So all of them put together creates the solution created. Thus, is engineering. Engineering is a set of skills that used to solve any technical problem. Both engineering and science involve observation and analysis. If you look at it, they are involved two different perspectives. Science involves the questions and concepts. So it creates the questions and concepts, while engineering creates the solutions for the problems that are there. So moving on, what is not engineering? So we have seen what engineering is, but then there are certain things which cannot be called as engineering. Or from my perspective, I feel that, see, one thing is engineering is definitely different from science. As I already indicated from the definition, engineering is more of solving problems. So engineering is applied science. Science explores the natural world. So discovery is actually the essence of science, while invention, innovation, these are things which are essence of engineering. The second thing which is not engineering is that programming. Programmers, from my perspective, programmers are not engineers. When I say programmers, what I mean is people who are just merely coders. Programming is actually a tool in the hands of an engineer. So he uses it to design and implement solutions for certain real world problems. So engineers do a lot more than just programming. So that is a fundamental thing that we need to understand, because this is one myth that is normally prevalent in the industry, that an engineer means, particularly in the IT industry, an engineer means he does programming. So an engineer does a lot more than programming in the IT industry. Coming to how engineering is important to Indian economics and the growth. India is claimed to be an agrarian state, meaning basically a country which is based on agriculture as the primary uh, source of income and so on. But if we look at the statistics, only 15% of our GDP comes from agriculture, while 55% is coming from manufacturing and technology. On the other hand, the reason why it is called agrarian state is because 55% of people are employed in agriculture, and less than 30% are employed in technology and manufacturing. So we have a situation today where 55% of the people are actually contributing to 15% of the GDP. The only way that this can change is basically like the shifting happening more towards manufacturing and technology. At the same time, the contribution of agriculture cannot come down. So which means we need to have a lot of mechanizations, automations, and stuff like that influencing agriculture also. That is the way forward for India if it is actually going to become an economic superpower. Now, when you look at a manufacturing perspective, how things are today. Current global situations, both because of the COVID scenario and the anti-China postures that are there across the globe, are extremely favorable to India. But it requires a lot of tough decisions to be made in the short to mid-term, which I hope the government will take the right steps there. But it also requires a lot of things from our perspective to shift our focus from doing things by taking the ideas and then trying to be more of execution oriented to being more of ideation and also solving problems and doing things. If we do these things right, if we execute right, India can have a very strong manufacturing base in the years ahead. For all these things, engineering is going to be the key for growth of India's economy. Just taking a look at any. Okay. No questions so far. Okay. I would like to categorize engineers based on specialization into two categories. One category is the generalists. So generalists are people are engineers who are strong at generic engineering tasks. So they can do multiple tasks, and they are like they can span a broad spectrum of activities and tasks. So some examples are like industrial and manufacturing procedures, processes, then program or project management kind of activities, and computer programming, the programming part of the IT thing. And any organization, if we look at it, need a significant number of such people. These are the people who are more of the workers who execute the solutions, implement the solutions. So we need a large number of such people. But most often, the skill level that is required is more at junior levels. No significant specialization is often necessary. A basic education level will be preferred. So if you are looking at an engineer, a basic level of say BTech or BE or something will in the respective domain is most often enough. On the other side, the other category is specialists. Specialists are people who are specialized in certain domain. So that way they are a lot more narrower. They have a lot more narrower focus compared to the generalists. They typically are techno architects, architects of technology, and the people who design solutions. They are very strong in their domain, and most importantly, they have a strong skill in critical and analytical thinking and problem solving. Here, for these kind of people, experience is really their strengths. So as they get more and more experienced, as they grow in experience, they are going to become more and more valuable as specialists in the organization. And most importantly, specialization is most often required. So which means it's not just about basic education level that we are looking at. Most often we would need masters or doctorates in the specialized areas. Having categorized engineers into generalists and specialists, what can you be after an engineering course? Once you are done your course, what are typically your what are the designations you can be called? We all know that as engineers, you can be called as an electrical engineer, electronics engineer, computer engineer, mechanical engineer, metallurgical engineer, marine engineer, and so on. There are several such things. There are about 55 to 60 different streams that are available today. Okay, and that's just not enough. Each of these streams have several possible specializations. Okay, I'm just providing you some very basic samples here. Some very common engineers, for example, designations for electrical engineers. It could be QC, that is quality control engineers. It could be a test engineer. It could be a reliability engineer, process manufacturing engineer, electrical research engineer, electrical design engineer, and so on. Similarly, we have for computer science, we have several things. From computer science could be more in related to IT, training, education, etc. Or it could have certain unconventional career paths. It could be certain management-oriented paths in the IT industry. It could be certain very conventional things like IT specialist, system analyst, network engineer, and so on, and so on and so forth. So this is basically on the computer science. If you look at the classification under mechanical engineering, it could be an aeronautical engineer, an automobile engineer, an industrial engineer, a production engineer, manufacturing science and engineering, some precision manufacturing, aerospace engineering, and so on. There are several such combinations that's possible. What about civil? Look at all these things that are the names that are all thrown out in this slide. Materials, strength of materials. It could be specialized in applied mechanics, wastewater, irrigation, or it could be surveying, structural design, and so on. There are several such things which could constitute a civil engineer. So if we look at it, on one basically the first level of specialization, we have a lot of choices, and under each specialization, again, each stream we have several specializations. So an engineer is actually comprises of several things, but there are certain common things about every engineering. Every batch of engineering has several sub-branches or specializations, and the specialization typically mostly is available only in post-graduation. So this determines what is going to be your preferred domain. At the moment you do your post-graduation, that means you are selecting your preferred domain of operation. The second thing is the level of specialization. Whether you post-graduation and doctorate is definitely taken for granted for if you're going to be a specialist. And then it could be technical engineers, or you could actually get into more of engineering management. At the same time, engineering management is basically you get into management roles, but are very closely tied with the engineering stream. And the nature of the career could be full-time job versus part-time job for like consultant, or it could be an entrepreneur versus salaried versus self-employed, and so on. So each branch has these kind of all different categories, different choices that we have. But at the end of it, something that is common for all engineers is that all engineers need to be creative and analytic. That is basically the ability to apply science. They should be strong in problem solving. And last but not the least, engineers should be prepared to be constantly learning and updating their technology. So these 3 points are going to be common across every branch, across every specialization that you select. Specifically in engineering, if you see, the technology is changing at a very rapid pace. Many of the streams in engineering is changing at a very rapid pace. Be it the IT or the electronics engineering or electrical electronic engineering, or the aerospace engineering, or it could be the mechanical engineering or civil engineering. Technology is undergoing vast changes, and that changes are happening at a rapid pace. So these 3 points are essential irrespective of the stream and specialization that you select. So any questions so far? Let me take a break and just take a look at any questions if there are. Yeah, I hope I'm audible. There is someone who has said I'm not audible. So I hope, okay. So no questions so far. Let's move on. So at this point, I'm going to stop and pose a key question to answer. So when you are looking at a career in engineering, the first question that you need to answer for yourself is, what is the stream of choice and what is the specialization? When I do this, the factors I would typically take into consideration is my own personality traits. What is the kind of person I am? So when I say person, I could be a person who likes to work more with a group of people in a team and things like that. Or I could be a person who prefers working by myself. Even if working in a team, I would prefer to take my task and do my task alone and then go back and merge with the rest of the team. So these all differentiate the kind of streams that will be more appropriate for the people. So personality traits is extremely important. And then the second one is going to be my passion. So passion is going to be very, very critical, because the choice is not that you have made the choice and then you are going to be there for a short period of time. This is something that the choice that you make is actually going to determine the rest of your life. Your career is going to span probably in the next 30-40 years, and you are making a decision which is going to impact your 30-40 years of your life. So it has to be passion driven. So the area that I'm very passionate about, how deep or shallow do I want to so I will be passionate about an area, but I would like to learn a lot of things in this area, not getting too deep into the area. Or I could be a person that whatever topic that I take, I want to go to the depths and really understand to the very depth of it, and then move on to the next. So I could be either of these kinds. So, and both in both kinds, the person is really passionate about the area. It is not that he is less passionate because he tends to keep himself shallow. But so even if you have identified your area of passion, you need to be very clear about what kind of a person you are. So a person who's very strong analytically probably will be more interested in going to the depths, whereas a person who's more interested in actually designing and the big picture, looking at the big picture of things, probably will be more interested in looking the breadth. Okay. And the third one is what kind of a role is suitable for me? Do I want to take a full-time job, or do I want to be more of a kind of an innovative person, creating, coming up with own ideas, ideations, and then getting to be an entrepreneur? So these are typically the factors which I'm going to use to answer this question number one, which is basically what is the stream and what is going to be my specialty. So moving on here. So now this once we have answered this question, we are now ready to set a career goal for ourselves. So first is that we know our personality type, what are our strengths, what are our motivators, what motivates us. Is it do we get motivated by a lot of people being around us and a lot of people appreciating our work, or do we get motivated by the that level of depth and the finally the solving some really complex challenging problems. So all these things are going to be very important when you are setting your career goal. Seek a mentor to advise you properly if you are in doubt, because these things are extremely important in making a selection of your stream, specialization, and now when you are getting onto your career goal. Then identify the stream that aligns with the passions, strengths, and motivators. And once you have done this, the most important point is to create a career goal, which is not typically when we say career goal, most often people say that, okay, I want to finish my degree and then get into a job in that I would like to get into an automotive industry, I could get into a IT industry or whatever. But that's not the career goal that we are talking about here. We want you to set a career goal which is at least 15-20 years away. If you can set a career goal which is even further away, great. But it should be a goal which is at least 15-20 years. You should be able to think for yourself and be very clear that in 20 years time I see myself being this kind of a person. You cannot, so which means a career goal that I'm talking about cannot say that I will be an expert in Java. I'm going to be a Python expert. I'm going to be an expert in VLSI design. Today it is VLSI. Tomorrow it could be VVVLSI. Okay. So we will not be able to uh, mention the mention the technology in the career goal. So career goal should not have technology, but it should be very clear about what is the kind of role that you are going to be playing 20 years down the line. And once you have created the career goal, you have to now create a path on from today. This is where I am today. From this position, how am I going to reach my career goal in 20 years time? And since 20 years is a long way off, my recommendation is that you please chalk out at least 2 to 3 paths. Because for example, my first path can be like, suppose I'm still in my 12th standard. My first path can be that, okay, I want to write JEE, I want to get into an IIT and then do these things, and then I will reach my career goal. So, okay, fine. What if JEE, you don't get into IIT? So you have your second path. Do you have an option other than IIT? So that way, make sure that you can have different paths, but at the same time, still the paths are so aligned that they are all aligned to the same direction, and eventually they continue to focus on the same career goal and reach the same career goal. That's going to be extremely important. Once these things are set, then know the courses that are available and options for admission available in each of the identified paths. Now here, Note that I'm talking about courses that are available, but I'm not talking about the institute or the college that you have to get admission. So the driving force for you should be what course you want to do, what stream that you want to take. But today, most often I find that students are more interested in getting into IIT. They will say, I'll get into IIT. What do you want to do in IIT? Oh, whatever I get, I would like to do. Maybe if I get computer science, fine. If I don't get computer science, I'm okay with this, okay with this, okay with this. That means you are not clear about your stream. You are ready to compromise your stream just because you want to get into the institute. But remember, the institute is it is very very good that you are having a focus on the institute, and getting into the top institutes is extremely important and extremely good. But at the same time, it is the stream that you actually land up with, which is going to determine what career you are going to take the rest of your life. So now, which is going to be important? Is it the institute that should be a primary goal, or should it be a stream? So this is something which we tend to get mixed up. So we have to be very clear about what we want to do. And then once this is set, work towards securing the path chosen in the order of identified preference. So you can say that, okay, I want to do my BTech after 12 standard. I want IIT to be my first preference. I'm going to do my, if not IIT, I'm going to try in this institute, this college, or whatever you have your options there. So then start working towards trying to attempt to reach your top goal, first goal. Any? Let me take a break and see if there is any questions. So now we have set our career goals, right? The next question that comes after engineering graduation, after a BTech, what next? There are two options open. One, you can either go for a work after your BTech. You could take on entrepreneurship, or it could be a salaried job, or it could be a self-employed job. The other side is further studies, basically MTech, ME, MS, or PhD, or you could get onto the management line by doing an MBA, or you could even get into civil services like IAS, etc. All these things are options open. But the underlying thing that should be governing your decision is, what is my career goal? So depending on your career goal, your decision has to follow. So this is your second question. So question one was your stream and specialization. Second question is, after graduation, what next? Then how to, so you have now decided, and now you are now looking ahead, and now you are now setting yourself for preparing for a career in engineering. How to prepare for career in engineering? First, you have identified the right stream for a career in engineering. That decision is already done. Schooling, what institute or what college that is required for the right educational background. Should you study? Should you do your post graduation in India, or should you go abroad, or do your post graduation here and then go abroad for your doctorate, or do your doctorate also here? All these questions have to be answered. You need to ensure that you identify the right course, the institution, and once this is done, you have to check your admission methodologies, etc. So now the schooling is also decided. Okay. Then the third one is, you have to choose a path or a niche area to specialize in. So what is going to be my USP? So I need to be, I need to specialize in area ABC, some area, and that specialization invariably will require a master's or a doctorate. You have to do the homework and ensure that you decide your specialization and you appropriately position yourself for the related courses. Then I strongly recommend every student of engineering to find a mentor and make connects in the industry. Ideally, the mentor should be a veteran from the industry that you have chosen. Okay, so they will be able to give you a lot more insights into what is the kind of life that awaits you when you get into that industry. So it is very important to have such mentors. The second thing which is very important is internships. Now, internships gives you the connects in the industry. Internships helps you get your hands dirty and gets you gets you an insight into what kind of a work you are going to be doing once you get into that industry. Okay, I find a lot of students coming in from fresh from college having certain notions on what their job is going to be, but when they come to the industry, they get a good shock because what meets them is completely different from what they have in their mind. I'll give you an example from the IT industry. I will pick examples from IT industry because that's where I come from. But this is true in every industry. Okay, from the IT industry, if I were to pick up an example, a graduate engineer who joins this industry, every guy who joins, particularly people with computer science or electronics background, they want to actually do development. To them, development means should involve some lot of programming from scratch. And believe me, no industry in the world today will do programming from scratch. So every programming is as per the definition, their definition, as per the definition of the engineering graduates, every programming is actually a maintenance job because you have some old program, you have to now go and tinker with that program and add some new feature to the program. So no programming job involves writing programs from scratch. So this is one thing which is actually certain wrong notions that are formed when you're students. So it is very important to get a peep into the industry through the right internships. And last but not the least, even during your student days, continue to stay up to date on the field. So know what is actually relevant to the industry. And that's the best way because you might be studying certain things, but is that something that is going to be directly applied in the industry, or do you need something more or something less? That is something that you will know only when you are actually in touch with the industry. The next one is, see, basically we have in the previous slide, in this slide I have talked more about preparing for a career and in engineering in generic sense. I would probably be now elaborating a little bit on the internship, but it's more of a when we look at what we do in an internship, it is basically get our hands dirty. That's what I said, right? So it's basically like you are going to be taking up some projects and doing those projects elaborately and trying to understand the context and solve certain problems that you started working on. That's the fundamental thing about a project. Okay. And right up front, when we defined engineering as problem solving. So that being the case, problem-based learning or hands-on learning is the primary backbone of engineering. So engineering is all about doing and solving things. It requires hands-on activities. So the learning methodology that you employ should necessarily be more aligned to problem-based solving. But unfortunately, very many institutions, when you are doing your course, you will get little opportunity. You will get opportunities, but not enough to be able to really get a flavor of this problem-based learning. You do get to do your final project, no doubt about it. And some courses you will do some small projects, case studies, or something like that as part of the course curriculum you will do. And every such course curriculum, that every project that you do is extremely important, and that is actually going to help you align yourself more with problem-based learning. So the problem-based learning, in my view, from my perspective, the PBL is the heart of entire engineering education. So if you get enough of it, great. If you don't get enough of it, you have to ensure that you actually get more out of it, more of it. How do you do that? You have to. That's where internship comes in. Take your internships seriously. Do your internships. Do your projects in the internship, and that is going to be one way you will get your hands-on hands-on PBL there. What are the other things that you can do? So basically, this is an elaboration of what I just said, how to equip better on employment. So this is, I would say, the third question that you should ask: how to equip yourself better. First, work on multiple projects. So every curriculum, wherever you get an opportunity, every course you do, if you get an opportunity to do your project, please take it up, work on the project. And when you are working on a project, even if it is not a requirement of your final report, make sure you know the background, the context, what is the environment that this whole thing works in. You try to understand a little bit about the environment and the reason why you are doing the project. In very many cases, particularly in projects which are part of courses, the professor will give you the title of the project. They will give you that, okay, you have to solve this problem. This is the problem. This is the project that you have to do. But try to understand why that particular problem has to be solved. Try to go dig deeper there. And even if it is not requirement of your course, please maintain a formal or a semi-formal. Even a semi-formal is enough. But make sure that you maintain a project report of whatever project that you did. That project report should contain what is the problem, what is the proposed solution, what is the implementation of the solution, how did you go about implementing the solution, any related data that you took, whatever reading you took from the implementation, and then from the data, what studies you did and inferences you derived, or the conclusions you derived from the data, and how you close the project. Now, these are some very, very minimal things that you should have in your project report. Make sure that you create such informal project report, even if a formal one is not required. I won't call it informal. I would rather call it semi-formal. But it is important for you to keep these kind of project reports. This will come very handy when you go out for your interviews for the campuses and your placements. So it's very, very useful to keep these project reports. The second thing is, when you get some off period, that is basically some vacation, or you have completed your course and you don't have you are not joining your job yet. So you have, say, a few months to wait before you join your job, or you have not got any offers and you are looking for a job. Now use that period to create projects for yourself. Pick certain projects and work on those projects. So these are projects which you have created and worked on beyond the requirements of the curriculum. And if you have done any, they will definitely be adding a significant value to your profile at the end. Any company, any interviewer who looks at it and finds that you have taken it upon yourself to do these kind of projects over and above your curriculum requirements will definitely get the message that you are really interested, and to what extent you are ready to go to learn and implement and do things. So if you are aligned, if whatever you have done is aligned with the requirements of the company, then they will be more interested to look you up closer than somebody who doesn't have it. The second thing that you can do is prepare with certain very common skills, which is usable across domains. Some examples. First is basically programming and scripting language. This is not something which is only for IT industry. Now, programming and scripting is becoming a mandatory thing for every industry. Everywhere, automation is becoming an in thing. Automation, everybody is talking about automation. Be it a manufacturing industry, several things are getting automated in the manufacturing industry. And then you have the IoT, which is a buzzword today. IoT is being implemented in several industries today. When you talk of IoT, programming, some level of programming or scripting will be required. So it's good to equip yourself with some programming or scripting language. Like, for example, it could be Python or related libraries and stuff like that. And but one most important thing is, please don't tie yourself to those programming language and call yourself a specialist in Python, a specialist in Java, because it could be like, if you look at the way programming languages evolved, there was a time when the programming language that was most prevalent was something like C, C++. Then it gave way to other things like Java. And today we are not even talking about Java, we are talking about Python. And tomorrow Python might give way to some Viper or something else. Some other thing will come up and it'll. So these keeps evolving. So don't tie yourself to a particular language. Then the second thing is that preferably machine learning principles. You don't need to be experts in machine learning to be able to create algorithms in machine learning, etc. But be good enough to use the machine learning principles to solve problems. So there are several libraries available today You should be able to use the machine learning tools to solve problems in the domain of your interest. And then the other thing is foundations of in data analytics. Every industry is generating very significant amount of data. How do you read the data, interpret the data, and extract relevant information from the data is becoming extremely critical and important. And that data is how you use that information that you have extracted to make more meaningful decisions. That's the whole fundamental principle of data analytics. So it's good to know the principles, the foundations on data analytics, and how data analytics impacts the domain that you are interested in. And the last but not the least, certain personality and interpersonal skills. We will look at a few of these skills which are very critical for engineers. One is basically continuous learning. I can never say that this is enough. Learning is enough. Okay, I will keep reiterating because for engineering, continuous learning is extremely critical. As I told you, technology keeps evolving, so we have to be ready to keep learning and keep evolving ourselves. And this evolution has to be at a fast pace, and it is self-paced. So nobody is going to give you a workshop saying that okay, go and attend this set of class, learn this, and come. If you get that opportunity, it is wonderful. But in very many occasions, you will not have that opportunity. You have to read up yourself and learn the newer things. So basically, it has to be fast. It has to be self-paced. It has to be continuous. So continuously upgrading of technology and engineering practices or new tools, things that keep coming in, etc. Second important one is communication and interpersonal skills. Every engineer will be working in teams in some form. So you should be able to work in larger groups. So teamwork and collaboration is going to be mandatory for every engineer. Ideation and creativity. Now this is going to become a premium, particularly in India as we move forward. So far, India has been more of an implementation or an execution oriented industry particularly as far as IT is concerned. But today things are changing. We are now having very many startups. The startup culture, the fundamentals or the foundations of startup culture is ideation and creativity. So we should be ready to actually be creative thinkers, objective thinkers, and strong decision makers. And this kind of people will very soon, in the next 5 years to 10 years, it is going to be that these people are going to be the ones who will be dominating the scene in many of the industries. And adaptability. How quickly you can adapt to changing environment. It's again going to be very important. Now, these are all more about equipping yourself on the engineering skills, the technical skills, and the soft skills. Most important thing, which is going to, which is leading the next one, which I'm going to talk about, is something which is going to be a very different thing. And I would say that the way we all visualize our jobs, our work-related activities itself is likely to undergo a lot of changes. You have to be able to market yourself. The reason why marketing is important is that we have so far job means we have a salaried job where you actually you are employed in a company and you stick with the company for the time period that you are you like. If you like or the company doesn't like you, at some point you will switch out. That's a different thing. But then you are employed for a duration in the company, and that means the terms of the thing is all employment, and it is all you're being paid for the time you spend in the company. You are not being paid for what value you bring. Obviously, you have been employed so that they see that they expect certain value to be contributed from you. But the employment is going to be driven more from the time we spend in the company. But that is going to change. In the coming decade, in this decade, you will see a shift of employment from salaried this kind of a permanent employment to contract-based employment. Contract-based employment means they are going to pay you for the value addition that you bring into every project. So they will form a team for a particular project, and once the project is done, the team gets disbanded, and then you have to look for another project which will be. So if you have executed well, and probably the same organization might continue with the team, and they might continue with one project after another. All those things are there, but still, all the same, every organization will start looking at minimizing the people whom they have on permanent roles. They will probably have a nucleus, a smaller group of people who are on permanent roles, and a larger group of people who are more on contractual work. If you are going to be on contractual work, you need to know how to market yourself. So, which means first and foremost, you have to have a very clear resume that can highlight your strengths. So, it's just to give you an idea on what kind of resume will be required. A resume should have a summary page. That is, the first page should be a summary page which captures all your key points of experience, skills, academia, etc. It just captures, summarizes all these things, and then in the subsequent pages you provide whatever details are required. Okay, keep the resumes very precise, clear, and as small as possible. A best resume is not more than 3 pages long. If you need to give a lot more details about the projects, for example, I was talking a lot about having the creating formal or semi-formal project reports. Keep all those project reports with you. You can add a line saying that additional information or detailed reports can be provided on request. Keep those reports with you, but don't put it as part of your resume. And once, if they ask for more details, you can actually share those reports with them, or whatever, you can show the reports or do whatever is required. The second thing which is important is a cover letter, a crisp cover letter that is customized to each job application. Note that I am making a difference between a resume and a cover letter here. From my perspective, the way I look at it, your resume should be normally more talking about your skills, your strengths, etc., which cannot change from job to job. So when you apply for multiple jobs, your resume normally will be more or less constant, will be fixed. But what will change is your cover letter. Cover letter is basically mapping your strengths and skills to the job that you are applying to. So try to understand more of the job from the job description, and then try to write out on why you actually fit that particular job from the job description that is given. So that's a cover letter. The third thing is awareness and expertise in digital marketing. Social media is being extensively used for everything today. If you are aware of using social media for marketing yourself, absolutely great. So try to build that expertise. Then the fourth thing is, which is very critical and very important, is referrals. Keep a list of people who can stand up and vouch for you. Okay, now it's just not about you actually creating a mental list and creating a list of people whom you can go and whose name you can give. You have to talk to them and make sure they are ready to actually stand as reference for you. Talk to them and keep that list ready with you. And these list of referrals should preferably be people who have worked with you. Either it should be people from college, from the certification programs that you have done with them or something like that, or it could be projects or internships that you have worked with them. So try to create a list, a fairly good list of all from all these kind of things that you have done. Having this, you will be able to prepare yourself very well when it's time for you to face the interview and market yourself. So, any questions so far? Okay, I got a question from Professor Ghosh. How important is an engineering degree to someone who would like to choose a career goal through an MBA degree? Does someone with an engineering degree have an edge over others? Sir, I will not say that they have an edge, but as I told you, engineering degree with an MBA can actually bring in a lot of. It opens up a lot of channels in the engineering management roles. So very many technology industry will look for that kind of a combination. So from that perspective, an engineering degree will help for an MBA. But if we look at MBA candidates who have completed their MBA, but from different other streams, they when it comes to actually fitting into technology industries, they may or may not be able to fit as well as engineering MBA. So that way, an engineering MBA probably, in my view, probably stands a little bit of stands has an advantage over the other MBA. Are there any websites or internet sources that would help a student with ideas to choose or formulate a project that he or she can do on their own? I don't have any ready website off my head, but I know for sure that basically depending on the domain that one is interested in, there are several. Each domain has its own set of websites. By googling one, you will be able to find out a lot of these kind of websites that give problems which have certain open problems which are discussed, which discuss some of the problems or discuss some of the solutions that have been done in that websites. In fact, I would just digressing a little bit. In fact, when I'm talking about projects, when you're solving problems, you don't need to solve problems which are absolutely new and which don't have a solution. For a student, even taking up a problem that has been solved, a solution exists, but you can actually independently create a solution for that and come up with your own solution for it. That also is a good enough thing, because why are we doing these projects? It is more to establish your skill and your strengths in that area. It is not about not about doing active research. So from that perspective, you can even pick problems which have been solved, which are solved in the industry. So that's also a good. Kaggle is definitely one place where you can actually get a lot of problems that are getting discussed. Yeah, thanks Satish for that. How does an engineering degree help in the preparation for UPSC and MBA exams? Theoretically, I I will say that there should not be any linkage from an engineering degree for preparation of this. But in reality, engineering, as I told you, one of the fundamental requirements for engineering is basically analytical thinking, strong, very critical thinking, objective thinking. Now, these are all the traits that are very, very relevant and required for preparation for your UPSC and MBA exam. Yeah, we can. Yeah, Satish. Yeah, you have given a lot of information there. So basically, Kaggle gives a lot of data analytics projects, and you can participate in hackathons, etc. Yeah. So I think. Thank you, sir. Thanks, Professor Ghosh, for bringing up some very valid questions, which made me, uh, which I didn't talk about them. Yeah. One question from Veronica. I don't want to be an engineer. Instead, I want to go for either UPSC or MBA. My PCM subjects are strong, so everyone tells me to get an engineering degree. So I wanted to ask that, how does an engineering degree help with MBA and UPSC? So I think I have answered that question. Yes, you can. In principle, you can go for your UPSC or MBA exam directly with a PCM, any science stream. But in engineering, you will be able to build on your applied thinking, critical thinking, objective thinking. So that's how engineering actually helps you prepare better for your MBA. I mean, this is if you look at the statistics, the majority of the people who enter IIM, if you look at the statistics, many of them have an engineering background. It's much larger than the other person. I guess this is the reason why it happens that way. So, would you suggest hackathon to improve our skills over a particular topic? Hackathon is an extremely powerful mechanism of improving your skills. Yes. But again, I would revert back to the same thing. When you do your hackathon, please do your hackathon. And then once the hackathon is over, please record whatever you did as part of the hackathon as a semi-formal project report for that. So maintain that. It's very important for you. Thanks, Gayatri, for suggesting about bringing this up. Yep, Satish, very valid point. You can showcase your project in GitHub. GitHub is an open forum where you can actually create your projects, put your projects there, and which can be accessed by other people. It's open. It's a very good forum for actually sharing what you have done and getting a feedback on it. But again, all the same, project report. Please create a project report, because what all the struggles that you did, whatever challenges you went through in coming up with a solution, you can actually document it in your project report. What are the open problems that was there? How did you go about solving it? Or sometimes you might have tried to solve it, you might have hit a dead end, then you might have all these things. You will be able to put it as challenges you faced in your project report, which is very good information. But if you put it in the GitHub, then make sure that you are putting the link in your project report, so that that's available for the interviewer to take a look at your project if they want to really dig deeper. Thank you, Satish. Very good. Okay, if there are no questions, I think I would like to end my session here. Thank you so much for everyone for joining and and coming up with some of these good, very valid questions also. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be facing you and talking about it. And I would like to thank Deya for giving this opportunity to me to share my thoughts with all of you. Thank you all.